We can try it. We'll try doing it this way, the old-fashioned way. This is the equivalent of rubbing sticks together and holding it and hoping that flames. You start, Dave, and hold it close to the. Let's see how this works.
Clark Judge.
Hey, Clark. David Bastel, Mike Richards. Happy New Year. How are things? Can you hear us?
Same to you. I heard you calling twice, but I couldn't hear you. I couldn't get anything on the other end.
No problem at all.
Well, you won't. I don't know if you can. You won't believe how we're doing this right now. We're holding a cell phone up to a microphone, sort of like rubbing sticks together to create fire.
Okay. Well, you won't believe what's going on here. We got 50-mile-an-hour winds, and we're knee-deep in snow, and so we're in a blizzard. So this ought to be fun.
Well, I guess if Marvin Lewis can get a 2-year extension, then maybe this should work as well, right, Clark?
Yeah, anything's possible, I guess. If that happens, yeah, anything's possible.
Look, I understand the closeness that some ownerships groups would have with coaches who have that kind of longevity, and they probably almost become part of family when I start looking at, some of these families that own these teams. But at some point, to have some sort of accountability moving forward for your fans to pay all that money to never see a playoff win, I just was astonished that this even happened. Is it considered a huge shock that this was the result?
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I mean, the reason because he's been there for so long, and honestly, I thought it was sort of a mutual party of the ways. I felt, knowing Marvin, and not talking to him recently, but just knowing him, that he would have said, listen, we've gone as far as we can here. It's time for me to move on, whether I go to broadcasting, another job, but I've done what I can here. And he's done a lot in Cincinnati. He put that team back on the map. You look at where they were before he got there. He returned respectability to that program, did an awful lot for it. Now, the flip side, of course, is he's 0-7 in the playoffs. But the good news is he got him to the playoffs. And they weren't there, before, for a decade before. I mean, until Sam Weish was there. And then after Sam left, it was pretty dark in Cincinnati. And then all of a sudden, Marvin turns the lights on, and they're back in the playoffs. The thing that's sort of astounding to me is that he would go 2 more years at this stage of his career. He's not a young man. He's done what he can there. And we all know, as I said, what the playoff record is. But the fact of the matter is the Browns like him. Mike Brown's very happy with him. And they do have stability there. There is incredible stability in that division among Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. Forget Cleveland. Cleveland's an outlier. They're on another planet. But in that division, there's incredible stability. Mike Brown wanted him back, and I think Marvin's comfortable there. But as I said, I'm surprised at this stage of his career they would have said, 2 more years. Because to me, I think what you're saying to Bengals fans is we've got the stability. We're just not going to win any playoff games.
Yeah. We're in conversation with Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network. Clark's, before we move on with the NFL playoffs itself, which kicks off on Saturday afternoon, the rumors of John Gruden don't appear to be going away, and it almost seems like it's a matter of time until this guy returns. Is he making the right decision going to a Raider club? And I guess the money's right for him, and he's leaving a pretty nice position at Monday Night Football to do it.
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see on that. But from my vantage point, is the right decision. Yeah, he's probably getting a boatload of money, and he's got a franchise quarterback in place. He's also got a franchise wide receiver. I don't know what Marshawn Lynch is going to do next year, but that's a pretty good team, and it's got a great fan base. But my question would be, are the Raiders doing the right thing? I mean, John Gruden's got this reputation as, one of the great coaches of all time. He took Tony Dungy's team to a Super Bowl and he won. Now, granted, people would say, well, Tony Dungy didn't do that. I understand that. And he did. He won with Tampa with Dungy's players. But then after that, what? And after that, he had a losing record and he did not win a playoff game. Plus, he's been out for almost 10 years. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what Dan Snyder was trying to do with Joe Gibbs. You bring him back. You try to get the greatness of the Raiders back by going back to when you were in the playoffs, when you were a good team, when you were a great team. Let's bring John Gruden back. Well, he's been out of football for 9 years. And I know people, your listeners would say, well, he hasn't been out of football. He's been covering it for Monday Night Football, and he studies the tape. And I mean, far different than it is being in the office every day running a team. So I don't know that the Raiders made the right decision. I will tell you this. I know they handled it in absolutely the wrong way. First of all, Jack Del Rio did return respectability to that team. They were back in the playoffs last year for the first time since 2002. It was their first winning season since 2002. And how do they fire him? He has to announce his firing. He announces the firing of himself. It's pretty gutless.
That's pretty sad. We're in conversation with Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network here on rawmikerichards.com. Also watching, of course, live on the dedicated YouTube channel brought to you by DKI Canada. It's amazing, and I know people like to debate sometimes, when coaching spots become available, just some of the names that get thrown around. But I think it is logical that you would want to take a look at coordinators. But I think if you're a coordinator that also has some head coaching experience, that's got to be even better. So if you're the Giants, are you looking at possibly what the Patriots have on their sideline in terms of coordinators and sort of licking your lips whether you get a chance at either that defensive coordinator or that offensive coordinator? Because I think both might be good choices. Is that a possibility?
Well, I don't think the defensive coordinator is, because the owner has already said, I want somebody with experience, so that automatically rules Matt Patricia out. The offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, sure, it's a possibility. He coached in Denver, and he got off to, I think, a 6-0 start his first year, and people are saying, whoa, wow, this guy's the next Bill Belichick. Last 17 of his last 22 games there, and he went down in flames. He went down in a hurry. But would I hire him? I'd hire him in a heartbeat, provided he brings Tom Brady with him. Listen, Tom Brady makes any offensive coordinator look great. You look at, Charlie Weiss was there. He left. What'd he do? Nothing. I mean, what happens when you get a guy like Tom Brady is he makes everyone around him look that much better. And Josh McDaniels was smart to go back there because Tom Brady's the world's best offensive coordinator. He's the first offensive coordinator I would hire. But because of that Denver experience, I guess I'm jaded. I'm cynical. Watched it from afar. I certainly was in and around Denver at that time. And I hope he's learned something. Certainly he's going to be somebody they look at, and you might buy into it. But I'd be careful. Be careful what you wish for, because you look at guys from that Belichick tree, and they really haven't gone on to anything more than moderate success at best. And you go down the list. Yeah, I know Romeo Crennel had some success. Eric Mangini had some success. Charlie Weiss, not so much. But you go down the list, and it's not real good, guys. And the reason is, A, because you're not Bill Belichick, and B, because you don't have number 12.
Yeah.
And honestly, to me, I've said this to you before, I do think Brady and Belichick are someone like Lennon and McCartney, and you go, oh, let's start our own band. We're going to hire Ringo. Well, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I think I'd be careful there. I really like what LA did last year with Sean McVay. He was a guy who was completely an out-of-the-box move, young, taking a trial and taking a flyer on him. And it worked out because he's got young, imaginative ideas. I don't know if you'd want to go in a different direction, but right now it seems like they're tilting in the McDaniels direction. There are a lot of guys speaking out in favor of him for good reason. I mean, yeah, he's done a great job there, but how good would you be without Brady? And we won't know. We just won't know. But with Tom Brady, as I said, he's going to make most people look pretty good.
We're in conversation with Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network here on rawmikerichards.com. Clark, 4 games on this wild card weekend slate. Which one of the 4 intrigues you the most?
Well, I'll give you Carolina, New Orleans. I think that's number 1. But 1A is the Buffalo game. Buffalo Jacksonville. I think Buffalo's got a legitimate chance for an upset in that game.
Really?
Yeah, because they're playing with house money. Listen, they're not supposed to be in the playoffs, and suddenly, Cincinnati let them in, and so now you look at it and go, they've got nothing to lose. I realize that LaShawn McCoy is banged up. Hey, run Kyle Williams 20 times, right? In the middle of the pile. But I like it because I think they're loose. As I said, they have nothing to lose. They've got a very good defense that can force takeaways. They're playing a team that, to me, is vulnerable. Vulnerable because of one reason. Blake Bortles. I mean, you saw what happened last week when they tried to win in Tennessee. He turns the ball over. He saw the week before, turned the ball over. He will do that in close games. Yeah, Jacksonville's got a very good defense. Jacksonville could stonewall these guys. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a close game, and I do think the Bills have a chance to steal one here. That's the good news. The bad news is if you steal one, you go into Foxborough.
Yeah.
Adios.
Congratulations, yeah.
Yeah. But going back to that Carolina-New Orleans game, the reason I like that is because it's the third time these two teams have played this year. Everyone tells you it's very difficult to beat teams 3 times in a year. I don't think it is. And I'd ask anyone to look at example A if Buffalo were to win this week. Do you think Buffalo's going to lose to New England for the third time this year? Absolutely.
Yep.
But with Carolina and New Orleans closer, because these two teams have pretty competitively matched. But again, if Cam Newton plays as he did last week, and honestly as he has played much of this year, they don't have a chance. Things have got to go right for Carolina there. I like New Orleans that game. Do I think Carolina can win? Yeah, because I think they're a dangerous team. If they play right, if everything's going well, if Newton's on his game, I think they've got a chance. And I like them if they can come out of here, because I like outdoor teams. If you're going to Philadelphia, if you're a dome team, I don't like your chances. I just don't. But you look at the NFC guys, I'd say who's the team to beat there? And you probably come down to Minnesota. Is it Minnesota? Case Keenum? And maybe it is.
Clark, it's interesting at this time of year when names come up for the Hall of Fame. I'll be honest, there are times where, because I don't pay a lot of attention necessarily to guys' careers after that, like I think it's a marvelous thing, and there's certain guys in my head that I just see as Hall of Famers. So sometimes when I see a ballot and I go, oh, geez, I thought that guy was in already. Joe Jacoby. I just assumed that he was in the Hall of Fame already. I didn't realize he's still on the ballot, because to me, I look at guys' careers and I think if someone says that name to me, I'm just assuming that he made the Hall of Fame already.
Yeah, that's a good question, because Joe Jacoby wasn't even discussed for the first 17 years that he was eligible. The first 17. You have 20 years that you're eligible as a modern era candidate. For the first 17, he wasn't discussed. Then lo and behold, he makes it as a finalist. And not only as a finalist, he gets to the top 10. That's generally the springboard for the next year, because the guys who are anywhere from 6 to 10 and they don't make it, you look at next year and you go, those are the next ready guys. They're sort of in the on-deck circle, the next ready guys. So he was in the on-deck circle last year. What happened? He went backwards. He made it as a finalist, but he didn't make the cut to 10. So you go, his candidacy is losing steam. So now that he's in the 20th and last year modern era eligibility, what are his chances? And I don't know, because I heard what was said in that room last year. I know what happened, and I would say I don't think his chances are good, except for this. If you can have a solid presentation and you play upon this is his last chance. If you think he's worthy, this is your one last chance to get him in, because otherwise he goes into the senior pile, and the senior pile is stocked with so many Hall of Fame worthy candidates that they often are waiting for phone calls that never come. Guys have been waiting 20, 30, sometimes 40, 50 years, and they're Hall of Fame worthy. They should be in the Hall, and they've somehow been forgotten. If he goes into that pile, he'll be forgotten, and I think you're going to have to play on that very hard. Who presents him at the and it's Larry Michael who's presenting him at the board, because if you don't get him in now, he probably is never getting in. And again, if you think he's not worthy, I understand that. But if you're a voter and say, well, we'll put him in next year. No, there's no next year. This is it. And so if you think he should be in, this is your one and last chance to get him in. Otherwise, you're relying on the senior committee, and the chances of that happening are slim.
Clark, when you're talking about Hall of Famers, what are the slam dunks of this year's ballot?
There's one, and that's Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
You look at 13 years as a Pro Bowler, 10-time All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champ, Super Bowl MVP. He's checked all the boxes. He was a leader of the team. There's a statue of Ray Lewis outside the Ravens Stadium alongside one other guy. One of the guys, John Unitas. That's how much Baltimore feels about him. He was the most dominant figure on a dominating and physical defense. I would say he's the face of that franchise even today. People talk about the Ravens, you're going to think of Ray Lewis first. He's the one guy that goes in. And I think your listeners might even question, what about that incident in Atlanta? I think it was the 1999 Super Bowl, but in any case, that incident in Atlanta where he was involved and pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor. And it wasn't just an incident, it was a tragedy. And the fact of the matter is that will not be admitted for any kind of discussion. Reason being, we talk only about what happens on the field or in the locker room. It doesn't extend beyond that. So when Eddie DeBartolo's name came up, for instance, and someone tried to bring up the fact that there was involvement with Louisiana, and he was actually found guilty of a, I think, I'm not sure if it was misdemeanor, but in any case, that was not admitted. There are things that would not be admitted with certain candidates because they're off-the-field incidents. That would be the same thing with Ray Lewis. When you look at his record is terrific. I mean, and honestly, it just jumps out at you. You go, whoa, okay, Ray Lewis is going in. And if he's not going in this year, you put him in next year, why would you wait? I mean, he's just that good. next to him, to me, probably the most likely guy is Brian Dawkins. I think he's going to be one of the five. But the most qualified guy to me in this group is Alan Faneca. And he's been in there 2 years. He's been 2 years eligible. He hasn't made the top 10. I mean, he's been a top 15 finalist this 2 years as a candidate. But those 2 years, he hasn't made the cut from 15 to 10. And that shows you that he's just got no momentum. And last year, we had two first-time finalists, Tony Baselli, Kevin Mawai, both of whom were offensive linemen. They jumped to the top 10 as first-time finalists. They leapfrogged Faneca. And they're worthy. I think for sure they'll get in the Hall of Fame at some point. Don't think it'll be this year, but it might be. But with Faneca, you look at that record and say, what's keeping him out? And I'm ashamed to say this, but honestly, what's keeping him out is probably the position he plays. We have blind spots towards certain positions. Safety is one of them. I think we're beginning to address that. But guard's another one. We had Will Shields up for a couple years ago. He was in the league 14 years. 12 of those years, he was a Pro Bowler. 7 of those years, he was an All-Pro. He was All-Decade. He never missed a game. Never. And it took us 4 years to get him in. And that, I just kind of looked at him, what? The most qualified guy in this class. Same thing's going on with Faneca. I think, we've got to get Alan Faneca in there sooner rather than later.
It's funny, so almost like, and this is, again, a really immature test, but listen to the guy who's talking. Sort of a reflection of this host. But, when you're playing as a kid, or let's say you're coaching a high school team, sometimes you will use a specific name for position, and to me, you use the name that is the dominant player in that position of that time. So if someone said, what's your linebacker look like? He's a Ray Lewis. He's a little Ray Lewis.
Yeah, right.
If he's a receiver, a long time, I would think you would say, I got a little Randy Moss on my team.
Right.
Does Randy
yeah,
Moss?
I understand where you're coming from with that. Randy Moss will get in. Not sure he's going to get in this year. I mean, I've heard people say he's a slam dunk. I've talked to enough voters, so I don't know that he's a slam dunk, and I don't think he is, only because of this. I think he's a slam dunk for the Hall of Fame, but I'm talking about just this year.
Yeah.
That I play when I want to play comment, that resonated with a lot of people. Like, this guy, he took plays off, huh? What? Look at the second half of that 2000 NFC Championship game where he just walked through plays. He'd thrown a fit on the field because they didn't allow some of his friends on the sidelines. That's who you want to put in as the first ballot guy. He's going to go in. A dominant receiver, all-decade receiver. But I think that's sort of voters' way of saying, listen, we remember what was said, okay? You're going to get in, but you're going to get in on our terms. And maybe that sounds petulant, but I think that could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Just saying it could happen. He's got some baggage. So does Terrell Owens. Obviously, he's got a lot of baggage. And there are 3 guys who are interesting in that position. Isaac Bruce is the other one.
Yeah.
People don't even talk about him. And the negative is he wasn't an all-decade receiver. The positive is he was a team leader. He won a Super Bowl. He was an MVP, team MVP at St. Louis, team MVP with San Francisco, had a zillion catches. I think when he retired, he was second only to Jerry Rice. I mean, he's a guy that should get in. I don't know that he could slip between these 2 guys. I'm talking about Moss and Owens and make it as a long shot. I think it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I think it's improbable. But that could happen, and if it were, you're going to hear an outcry from the Moss and Owens people. I understand that. I don't think it's going to happen, but in terms of Randy Moss, what you're saying is I don't disagree with you. I mean, people recently would say, Randy Moss, listen, I go far back. I go Raymond Berry, Lance Allworth. I cover Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice. I mean, to me, I start with Jerry Rice and work down from there. I mean, I heard Randy Moss say the Super Bowl in 2012, I changed the game. No one was the deep threat like I was. What about Bob Hayes, for God's sake? Bob Hayes changed the game, but most people today don't even know who Bob Hayes was. Right. And that's the sad thing you're dealing with when time goes on and the board gets younger. There are a lot of guys who haven't seen these people. I talked to one guy once and he would say, Ray Lewis is the greatest middle linebacker I've ever seen. Ray Lewis is the greatest middle linebacker in the game. Don't you think? And I went, well, no. And he said, well, who would you put in there? I said, Dick Butkus. I'd start with him. I think back to give me like Joe Schmidt, but how about Singletary? How about Jack Lambert? He went, Jack Lambert? I said, yeah, Jack Lambert. Yeah. And he just had this puzzled look, and I said, Jack Lambert, Steelers? He goes, never heard of him. And this guy, now I'm telling you, he's not on the board. He's not on the board of selectors, but he is a guy who covers the league. And I said, what do you mean you haven't heard of him? He played for the Steel Curtain, and he goes, that was before I was born, so I don't know anything about him. I said, well, you should learn about him because I'm going to tell you this. Abraham Lincoln was the president before I was born, but I know a lot about him. You can study it by Chuck Lambert.
Good example. Good example.
Clark, thanks so much for joining us in the sort of quest for fire. Like technology that we've used here today.
You guys have done a heck of a job. I like it. It's crystal clear here. You're doing a great job.
Oh,
Keep up the good work. I can follow you live on the internet, right?
Yes.
Follow the show.
Absolutely.
Live on the internet.
Yep, on
That's
YouTube,
right. Yep,
the Raw
you
Mike
got
Richards channel. Absolutely. There you go.
I'm going to watch because I want to see how the rest of this day goes for you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
so much.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hey, thanks so much, Clark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Clark.
Happy New Year to you guys. Thanks.
And to you.
That is Clark Judge joining us via. And by the way, Dave Bastel holding up the phone for that 107-minute interview. You know.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.